Okay, welcome everybody to our experience. I'm Chad, the CEO of ASCP, alongside my tag team partner, Tom Hansel, who's on a couch. I was going to rename the podcast On the Couch, on the Psychologist Couch with Tom Hansel, but I think we'll stick with
I mean,
our
I was
experience.
thinking about just laying back. You can give me therapy sessions.
At least he has on pants.
There we go.
This time, I can't promise that every time.
This is going to be quite the podcast, so I'm glad everybody is listening. We are very excited to have Carrie McClaughry here. She is a board member of ASCP. I joke with her that she lives on the Dutton Ranch in Montana, so we'll talk about that.
Yes.
And how that relates to pharmacy. And we'll just kind of have a discussion, Carrie. So why don't we just start? Give us who you are, your background, how you got here.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me today. So Carrie McClaughry. So as my friends say, you're my Julia Gulia, the rhyming last name, because it doesn't look like McClaughry. But so pharmacy. How did I get started in pharmacy? So I grew up in a household where my dad was a family practice doctor and my mom was a dietitian. And so our dinner conversations every night revolved around, medicine, who's sick, who's not sick, what's going on. Dad gets a page and he has to run to the hospital and check on a patient. So I just kind of feel like I was destined to be in healthcare. So just growing up in, a healthcare household, but no pharmacist. And I don't even know if I went to a pharmacy by the time I was in high school. So let's just be honest there. I didn't have much experience with pharmacy, but definitely healthcare. And so as I, decided in high school, I loved science, I loved math. And so just decided, these are areas that I want to focus on as I go into college. So I went to high school in a small town in Montana. There were 30 people in my graduating class, so real big town. It was mostly focused on sports and rodeo, so kind of like the Dutton Ranch, kind of like Chad said. But when I went to college, I decided to stay local, so I went to the University of Montana in Missoula, and my freshman year, I was having lots of fun. Running track and meeting people, and a girl that I met in the dorms my freshman year of college, her name was Callie, and she said, hey, what are you studying or what are you doing? And I said, well, I don't know, I want to go into health sciences, but really didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to be a doctor because I didn't want to be on call and miss Christmas morning. I knew that from my dad. And so she said, I have a sister who's in pharmacy school. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And so she took us out for drinks that night, and I was definitely underage, but the rest is history. So headed off to pharmacy school. So
Other than being able to easily drink underage when you're in a big state with a small population like Montana, talk about that. I mean, I'm going to make these probably broad assumptions, but it seems to me, and especially having, gone through the pandemic, that these states like the Dakotas, like Montana, really knew how to take care of people, knew how to deliver healthcare in a way that opposite of what you would think. They seem to be very good at it, whereas some of these metroplex areas where we have people everywhere do not seem to be as good at it. Is there a mentality when you live in a place like Montana that you do, the cliches of we take care of our neighbors, even though our neighbor might be 4 miles away? Is that just the overriding mentality? Is that why this works in healthcare, or what else is going on there?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think it's kind of an all hands on deck state, right? If there's a crisis or an emergency, you may not be the one that has the most experience in that area, but you help, like you said, you help your neighbor out. You lend a hand. So yeah, I mean, just especially in the rural settings. So I know for certain that there were pharmacists, pitching in, helping out, doing things that they may not have otherwise necessarily felt comfortable doing, but because they had the support of the communities around them and they were really looked to as that trusted advisor, that leader, that they stepped up to the plate. So yeah, kind of the small town, help your day route.
Well, it seems to be that there's a lot of intention around, especially maybe in an emergency, but there's a lot of intention. You're going to this facility, you're going to this group of individuals, maybe it's a rural environment, to do something, and therefore you go there and you do it. Whereas maybe when you've got clients everywhere, you have people everywhere, you're intentional, but you can't have quite the hands-on, almost one-on-one kind of approach that you can in some of these other areas. I don't know, but it's fascinating. We look at the data.
You do kind of you find that certain practitioners, they lose their ego too in a small town. Yeah. You very quickly learn that, I'll never forget one of the ER providers, the school called him and said, the guy that drives the bus is out today. We know that you have a license to drive buses. And so he was driving the bus route, 20 minutes later. And with his pager, like, call me if you need anything. And this was just recently. So I think that that's kind of like big picture, an example of pivoting to where you're needed. So, yeah.
That's cool. That's a great story.
Yeah. I'm like, man of all trades for sure. So I started my pharmacy. So first of all, backtrack a little bit. I penciled it out and I figured out quickly that I could be the most efficient getting through pharmacy school if I took 21 credits every semester for 4 semesters. So I never ended up with an undergrad degree. I went right from pre-pharmacy into the 4-year doctorate program at the University of Montana, and graduated and immediately started working in a hospital in Bozeman. So you've probably seen some film of it from the show Yellowstone. But started working in the hospital there and in the outpatient setting, and was working, helped start a Coumadin clinic. So a gal went on maternity leave and she was just getting ready to put this Coumadin clinic in place. So I kind of stepped in her spot and started working in an office within a medical group. So a group of internists, and just being literally right, in the same office, in the same pod. I basically had a exam room was my office. They would pop in there all throughout the day and say, I know this doesn't have anything to do with Coumadin, but can you help me with, X, Y, or Z? And so that was kind of like a foot in the door to show, hey, like, this could be a real thing. So we started eventually saying, well, yeah, I can do a full med rec, or I can, that little bit of leeway got me just really comfortable working with different providers and working, in an internist group. It's a lot of elderly resident or elderly patients or seniors. And so after doing that for about 10 years, my husband, who is from Portland, Oregon, decided he wanted to be back in his hometown. So we moved back to Portland, and looking for a job, a quick job, somebody said, hey, there's a long-term care pharmacy called Consonus, and I think they're looking for pharmacists. Would you just, here's an email address, send them an email and see if that would be something you were interested in. So moved, started working in long-term care, and I really honestly knew nothing about long-term care, but I had, spent time in nursing homes with my dad as a little kid and worked with seniors. So, but the term long-term care really wasn't part of my vocabulary, even when I walked in the door of Consonus the first day, just to be honest. So, yeah.
But you had such a great experience to offer Consonus because of that anti-coag clinic and the work that you were doing there. And it resonates with me a little bit, because when you watch legislation try to move, we're always talking about provider status. the first iteration of provider status, in order to make it palatable, was we're only going to do it in rural and underserved areas. And the reason that resonates is because, almost like your original story about why you performed so well in the pandemic, is you had to do these things. Like, there weren't enough doctors, nurses, and infrastructure. So pharmacists were already doing the kinds of things that we're trying to get legislation to support and reimburse on the other side. So it wasn't such a down step to say, okay, well, in order to make it affordable, we'll only do it in rural and underserved areas. It really was because that's where it's being performed probably already, and probably pretty well.
Yeah.
It's interesting to put that in perspective as we continue to try to move forward on things like provider status.
Yeah. I remember saying, okay, well, this is a really complex, like, Coumadin patient. If I like check their INR today and actually do that point of care finger stick, I can bill them for the visit because I'm providing a service. But that might be like a sliver of what I was doing in the time I spent with them. But it was a way to, like, say, I want to get paid for the work I'm doing. And so I wouldn't say we got creative, but, like, you want to help people, and the providers found value in it, and it was rewarding work too. So
well, that brings up another point, like, because people talk about how we do consulting in nursing homes today. It's very medication management, clinically focused, but in reality, you're getting paid to make sure that the medications are stored, handled, administered properly in the nursing facility as stated in the state operating manual. You're getting paid almost to be a protector of the facility to the regulations. But through that payment, you're providing all of these services that are so valuable to the patient in terms of medication management. So it's not any different. It's just sort of different ways of getting reimbursed. And I try to tell people that all the time, because when we say things like, well, let's say you can bill incident to through the physician for some of your clinical functions. People will say, well, you're already getting paid. I'm like, no, we're not. We're actually getting paid to check the storage, handling, and the administration of the medications. This would be actually getting paid for something that, yes, we may have been doing, but we really weren't getting paid for it. So it's okay to get paid for this, and to get paid for this, and hopefully, get paid for a number of different things to recognize the value that you're bringing. And that's sort of the path we're on.
Yeah. I mean, I like, just like with everything we do, we want the patient to be safe. And that just doesn't include medication. It does include medication storage and handling, but as we all know, there's so much more. Like, that is our North Star. And I think every healthcare professional would say that, but how that aligns with reimbursement doesn't always match up one-to-one. So, like, safety is my, number one. And then,
So you started working at Consonus, and I just think the world of Phil Fogg and Neil Marshall when he was there, and just tell me what that culture did for you and your career, and kind of how you obviously like it. You're still there, so tell me how that impacted you.
Here I am, almost 10 years later. Actually, 10 years later. So I started and I worked on the operational side, so the dispensing side of our pharmacy. And right as I was, like, I think it maybe was my first, maybe second week, we were doing a Kaizen event, which is, if you've talked to Neil Marshall ever, he's very involved in lean management strategies. So he comes from an engineering background, so not a pharmacist, but really looking at ways to be efficient in the work we did within the pharmacy. And so we were sitting, I was sitting down, I was kind of in the chair where you're processing stat orders, and there was a tour scheduled with Phil and Neil and some other leaders within our pharmacy, and they were touring a group of potential clients through the pharmacy and talking about lean management. And the tour was kind of, either it was ahead or behind the schedule. I can't quite remember, but they came up to where I was sitting, and Neil taps me on the shoulder and says, can you talk to us about, like, what you're doing and what lean management means to you? And I mean, this is like maybe day 10, like I said, like barely. So I like took off my headset and like standing up and kind of explained what I was doing. And I mean, I basically was winging it. Let's just be honest here. But it was enough. Just like having that conversation. And as I look back, Neil said, well, that was one of the moments where I was like, oh, this person might be a good leader within our organization. And so I say that only because sometimes people see things in you that you don't see in yourself. And I never thought of myself as like a leader or someone who would want to be a leader in long-term care pharmacy. But they definitely were, like, you should give this a try and see what it's like. And after being part of a hospital system where it was kind of like the oldest pharmacist on the payroll is kind of like the one in charge. I know it's not like that anymore necessarily, but this was like, oh, well, I've only practiced pharmacy for 10 years. No way could I be a leader. So I think for like students, that's one thing that I just think about and I really appreciate about the culture of Consonus is just you can be a leader at any age. It doesn't necessarily take, a 10-year to be a good leader. So yeah.
I mean, that culture is so important, and they're really the poster child for having a great culture, and that continues to expand. And I know Consonus continues to expand, but it really starts at home with leaders like Phil Fogg, like Jess Androff, and so I've been out there a couple times, but in this world of high turnover and a lot of labor challenges, not that you guys don't have your fair share of it, but it's so critical. I think people kind of almost dismiss or forget about the employees, but I think an employee-centric focus is really is a core value that a lot of pharmacies kind of miss out on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just being thankful. I know you mentioned Phil, just being, he's our CEO. He was AHCA, board chair during, we can probably say the most pivotal time during our time in healthcare, and just a true visionary. And so him, being able to look around and say, these are the people I want in these positions, or just even nudging you to try something that you may not normally put yourself, do for yourself. It was a big deal for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And as Tom mentioned, it resonates out of that culture. I remember Terry in the first few minutes of the pandemic when it hit the nursing home in Washington State. And I don't think it was your nursing home. I don't think it was Consonus's nursing home, but it was that area. And Terry was talking about it and her ability to rattle off the things that they instantly did when they realized that there was a problem, and to realize that that isn't something you invent on the fly. That had to be something that they had practiced and planned. And if we have an emergency, this is what it's going to look like, and here's how we're going to do it. And there was some innovation, but it was innovation specific to the threat. The
Yeah.
disaster reaction was already in place, and I just thought that was so impressive. And we talked about that during COVID a lot with Terry and another pharmacist from Consonus that I won't be able to remember. It's another Terry, right?
Terry and Terry. Yep. Terry and Terry. We're full
Right.
of Terrys and Aarons in our company. There's those two names that float around. But yeah, and I think too, like that kind of leans back to like, so kind of the culture. So we really invest in our people and in lean management. So kind of our just motto is, at the center of everything is patient safety. And that's the core of why we do everything. And then we look at process discipline, which is, like you said, if there's an emergency, what are the steps we're going to take, and let's be disciplined around that. And then making sure, so process discipline, and then professionals, having professional people at the helm and knowing that they are going to do the right thing no matter what the cost. We all kind of did the right thing then, no matter what that cost was to take care of people. So yeah, those kind of core principles within Consonus.
I love that term, process discipline. I'm sure there are people out there that may have never heard that term,
Yeah.
process discipline.
Yeah.
It immediately reminds me, my dad was a pilot. He's still alive, but he was a pilot in the military and served in Vietnam. And you would ask him about those times when he was being shot at or shot down, and he would always revert to, he called it training, like they were trained. So when they were in an emergency or a firefight, you thought back to your training and you performed the way you were trained. And it wasn't until later you're back at the barracks that you were like, oh my God, what just happened?
Yeah.
But that's process discipline. That's sticking to the process in the emergency so that you can survive it and handle it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, just practicing, in different pharmacy settings, I definitely worked, some extra shifts in retail living in a small town. I did that stint on the weekends here and there, and having the support staff in the pharmacy, our vital technicians that we have by our side, especially for floater pharmacists, saying, well, so-and-so, the pharmacist likes it this way. And the other pharmacists, they like it if I do it this way and set the stuff this way. So how would you like it? And I just thought that was like part of pharmacy, like, because the pharmacist was innately like in charge, the leader, like, okay, you like it this way. And which causes a lot of churn and turmoil for the employees, like looking back and just knowing like Consonus, we have like standard work, documented process discipline. So everybody is on the same page of, from the people, the technicians, that are doing all sorts of invaluable, the work that they're doing, and the pharmacists, like there's a standard and this is how we do it. And if we need to revisit the standard, great, but just making sure that we're all, doing that the same way. So, I always go back to that when I think of that technician asking me, well, how would you like it today? Kind of like how do I like my coffee? So,
right.
Yeah.
So you're now working with ASCP as far as board. Tell me about kind of how that evolved and what your what's your ownership, your responsibility, your direction that you're given there.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was in the operational side of the pharmacy, and decided to, just for family reasons, my husband and I decided to relocate back to Montana. And in doing so, I had to go to Neil and Beth and our leaders and say, I'm going to have to step down from this position, and I would love to stay with Consonus, but I'm going to be moving. And so thankfully, they took a chance and said, would you ever want to try, I don't even think it was remote working, like work from a distance. Like it wasn't even a thing. And so I started working on our client care side, which is our consultant pharmacist under Terry Fagan, who was on the board at ASCP. And I started kind of learning more about the consulting side of the Consonus business. And Terry has been an amazing mentor. And so she was on the board at ASCP. And she just, every time there was a question, like you said, during the pandemic, but even before then, anytime we needed a guidance or extra info on like a new policy, Terry would say, okay, well, I'm going to be on an ASCP call, or let me reach out to ASCP, or what would they recommend? And so she definitely planted that seed. And then living in Montana, she nominated me to be a delegate for Montana when she was when she got her position on the board. And then just through, attending annual meetings and participating in different ASCP events, I thought, this is an organization that really helps me in an area where I'm not as strong, where I'm weaker, which is, advocating for pharmacists. So here I am. Yeah. So we can thank Terry. So if either way, you can either thank her or not thank her. It's up to you.
So even though Chad was in his position, you still decided to move forward and
That's right.
be a part of that.
Obviously,
That's
I
right.
let Carrie get fooled.
Yeah.
So-
Even though I had a kind of a wild experience at my first ASCP annual meeting, I still came back for more. So
Well, that's the juicy part of this podcast. Let's talk about that. Talk about that
okay,
experience.
that experience. All right. Well, it was so we were in San Diego, and obviously perfect time of year to go to San Diego, right? Like flying out of Montana, going to some warmer weather. And that year, Neil was honored. So we were lucky enough to have some of our leaders there to accept that award on Neil's behalf. So it was just an amazing thing to be a part of, ASCP in that as well. And so after one of the sessions later in the afternoon, Terry says, hey, I'm going to head back, just check some emails, check in. And so we kind of split ways and we headed back to our rooms. And I got back into my room and thought, I better plug in my computer. So if you, are charging your computer, of course, in a hotel room, how it has the light, the lamp has got the plug in it. So I thought, of course, if I'm going to charge my computer and the plug's going to work, I have to turn the lamp on, right? It doesn't work if not, obviously. But so I turned on the lamp, jumped on the phone to call a consultant that had left me a message. And I'm sitting there on the bed and we're talking about things. And I start to smell this very unusual smell that I had never smelled before. And so I said, it smells like something's burning in my room. And he's like, huh? And I'm like, it's coming from the lamp. And there was smoke. So I kind of walked over with the phone and looked on top of the lamp and I could see that there was plastic burning on the lamp. So, instinct, you grab to get the plastic off the lamp. And it turns out it was a bag of a illegal substance, I'll just say, that sprinkled across my entire desk in my hotel room. So it was a little bit, yes,
So
a little
what did
bit
you do?
Suspicious.
Did you call?
Well, I told him, of course, what was happening, the person that I was on the phone with, and he's immediately Googling, what does crystal meth look like, etc. And so
you learned it. Pharmacist.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it did say, this is going to kind of crack the bags, and I took a picture. It says pill pouch on it, the actual baggie.
Perfect.
Didn't say Consonus anywhere, did it?
No, no, but I thought it was maybe being set up. I didn't know. Anyhow, so of course I called Terry, hotel security, and they got me moved to a different room because they were afraid the person that left it may come looking for it, which would not have been ideal. So all ended well.
I know ASCP gives gift bags, when you come and check in. So maybe that's everyone's story. Maybe everyone had that in their room waiting for them.
That had to be quite the scene, though. They come into the room, the crystal meth is all over the desk, and you're like, I don't know where this came from.
Yeah, that wasn't me. Well, the security guard nicely packaged it up for evidence. Let's just say that.
Let's go.
He took all the evidence and helped me get a new room. But the silver lining was that the hotel was very gracious and offered to treat me to dinner and drinks that night. So
nice.
We had a nice seafood tower. So
for those of you that attended that, and for those of you that didn't, that hotel is unique. We can rent the whole thing out for our meetings. We have every room. We didn't have it the night before you got there, so that I can't blame that on
shoot.
But we get the whole hotel, and for that particular meeting, it was the 21 meeting, I think. Mm-hmm. It was the first big meeting after all the COVID lockdowns. So it had outdoor space. It's a fun hotel.
Oh, it was awesome.
But it is like it was an open kind of concept, like your door to your room open to the outside. It does have like a motel feel to it.
Yeah.
This is a hotel feel. Um,
So do you
but it's
now
a cool
carefully
hotel, and we're
check?
going back there. We're going back there next year after Denver.
Nice.
I'm
But
excited. I loved it. I love
yeah,
that deal. It was awesome.
it's a great hotel, and we did put the stipulation in because we got some concerns that, if you remember, you could just walk into that hotel, walk through the hotel, and you're in the parking lot, and then you're at the light rail station, and then there's a mall on the other side. They are building, um, they're basically building entrances around all those open spaces, so you can't come into the hotel. It'd be like a normal hotel. You can't come in unless you have your key.
Yeah.
You just walk in. People can't use it as a cut through. I'm like, well, that would help considerably, and that would help us come back because
They're calling it the Carrie Project is what they
Yeah.
labeled the fence in their hotel. So.
trying to cut down on
Yeah. They're like,
fighting.
that was a lot of seafood. I don't know if we can probably build a wall for the cost of the seafood and drinks.
That's right. You said you got a seafood tower. I mean, you did the right thing.
Yes.
Sounds like a pretty good strategy. Bring your own crystal meth and get a free seafood tower in addition. So,
Oh,
so do you check every hotel you go into now and look at the lamp and just
Oh.
check around first?
100%. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, I think every time I turn on a lamp, I check. No. But yeah, no. So that was my first real ASCP experience. But yeah, no. And I just, another thing about Consonus, like all of our consultants have ASCP memberships. Like that is one thing I'm so happy that we can support because it's such a valuable resource. And I love that, another, investing in employees. That's why people stick around. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we're thrilled you're on the board. We're thrilled you're a leader in our organization, and are happy to have you with us as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's do a last parting shot. There's a picture behind you with people with cowboys.
Yes.
It's already evoking the whole Dutton Ranch Yellowstone motif for me. So what's that?
I know. Okay, so these are my cowboys. This is actually a picture that was taken in Texas. So it's a photographer named Gray Malin, Malin, and this is an art installation it's a town called Marfa, Texas. And there's a building. So the clothing brand Prada is called Prada Marfa. And so Prada put a art installation in this like one, road in, road out town in Texas. So it's a Prada store in Marfa, Texas. And this photographer, you can't go in and out of the store. It's just an art installation. Took a picture of the two cowboys in front of it. So I feel like it represents like a little country, a little city.
Yeah,
it represents. I like the city, but I'm more comfortable in the country. So there you have it.
Yeah, let's face it. I think Yellowstone, because of its ability to cast a light on Montana and the ranching, like everybody probably had their stereotypical "what's it like to be a rodeo cowboy," but then you watch Yellowstone, and I'm not talking about all of the drama, but I mean these are high-end people with these big ranches that are doing this, important land management work, and I thought that was a cool part of the show.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's interesting because a lot of the names they use in the show too are like I grew up down the road from, the Galt Ranch, and like all the names are true to the area, and so that makes it kind of fun. I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, drama, but there is a lot of truth kind of winding through. So yeah,
that's interesting. And
it's brought a lot of tourists here though. So
yeah,
which is okay, good and bad, right?
I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, the landscape is it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm ready to have the next ASCP meeting in Bozeman, Chad. Just let me.
I mean, we're gonna we do those apexes. We're trying to do things at visually appealing places to generate interest. So you never know.
There you go. I know. So at the Northwest Pharmacy Convention, we were Tom and I were chatting because he's been to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So we do an ASCP BCGP track one of the days at that meeting, and then have a meetup. And Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is absolutely gorgeous. And so we've been lucky enough to have some of the presidents of ASCP join us for that. So maybe you should jump on their flight and join them.
Yeah. Sounds like a good place to do a podcast at, Chad.
Yes.
I actually did that tour when I was president. And I guess that would have been, I was installed at the end of 17. So it would have been June or something of 17. And it's spectacular in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
And doing that little tour is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Some education, some good scenery, good
That's
people.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a good time.
Well, thanks so much for being on. We appreciate it. It was great. Even the crystal meth story. I know Tom was particularly interested in that.
He'll be at annual for sure now.
And he'll be checking his room and his lamp every time he goes to go in his own.
I'm just into the seafood tower. If I can find a way to get a free seafood tower, oh man, sign me up.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you the pictures of the evidence. So
nice. There you go.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening to our experience, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.